Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the LCS Report. I'm Rob, he's Nick, and as always, we start out with the best, most important question of the day. How's it going today, Nick?
I am not too proud to admit to you that I am having LCS withdrawals. I've had better days. I'm excited to get back into it. I'm glad we're talking about it. I think it's gonna tide me over for the next couple days. And I've been watching NACL, watching
Mm-hmm.
the Challenger League to which has been nice. It's been a good time to watch, but I'm also excited to get back to the LCS for these last 2 weeks.
Yeah, me too, me too. And we've got, I think, a lot of, I don't know, I think we've got a lot of interesting things to discuss to a certain degree.
For sure.
There's obviously the LCS coming back is the biggest news, but there's not much to discuss about that other than the fact that it is coming back. And this, like, we're back on our normal schedule now, at least for the next couple weeks. Obviously, once playoff times come around, things will change. We'll be more, I think, discussing the different potential matchups, all the way up to finals. Maybe we do a finals watch party or something like that, Nick. I don't know. We are, endemic with the LCS, so I don't know if they would allow us or not to do it, but I'm sure maybe we could ask. But there's, oh man, that's making me just remember the amount of
Well,
finals that we've watched together in person.
yeah. Well, it's funny. Everyone's upset about the whole, oh, I can't believe spring finals are gonna be in LA, and like I get why people are upset, but
But
I'm
you're
over
gonna
here
be able to
like,
go now that I think about
I'm
it.
over here like, cool. It's like I'm like
Uh,
in this state of I haven't been to a fire. I last year was the first year where I didn't go to either LCS finals
no, you
since
didn't. I forgot about that. Jeez.
wow, since 2017, I think.
Yeah,
So
the last one we sat
uh
together at was I think Chicago.
yeah, summer 22. So
It's crazy.
I am selfishly excited for that, but yeah, one of the few benefits of living in LA right now,
Hey,
for that. So
I'm excited for you, and I'm still hoping to pray one day that they're gonna make their way to Columbus. It is a pretty big esports town for people who don't know in Ohio. Like a lot of CDL and Pokemon events are actually there. There's one I think every year for Pokemon at least, and generally there's been a lot for like because MLG is based out of Columbus. For people who do not know that, so there have been a lot of FPS games that have made their way to Columbus at different points. So I'm hoping the LCS. I know they've got a lot of other big cities to go to, but if they come back to the Midwest, I'd love to see them make their way there. Considering they've basically surrounded me at this point. I've been to Detroit, Chicago, and St. Louis,
yeah,
all surrounding me, and it's like I feel like they're gonna end up.
they're doing whatever they can to be like, look, if we have to go to Ohio, our reputation will never be saved. We
We even have an
like
NACL team from the city I'm from. We have a
I
Cincinnati team. Come on,
shout
man.
out Cincinnati Fear. Hey,
Oh,
I'm not judging. I'm just saying they want to stay. They're like, you know what? We can deal with all the bad press the LCS gets, but the moment people think we're going to Ohio, it's over. We can't. That is PR. DefCon 5, I
I
guess.
I just want to
Um,
say Ohio is a much cooler and way more stuff to do state than people think that it is. We have like two of the biggest roller coaster theme parks in the world, in Kings Island and Cedar Point. Like people come from around the world to go to those places,
Cedar
guys.
Point is pretty wild.
It's
Yeah.
cool. We got the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We have the National Football Hall of Fame here in Ohio, man. Like, come
I did
on,
like the rock and roll. I went to Cleveland. I did like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Shout out to Ohio. I think
dude.
that's the only time it's ever been said.
Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Reds were the first ever baseball team. The first NFL game ever was played right up the street from where I live, up in Dayton, Ohio. The Wright brothers are
All right.
from Dayton, Ohio. You could not be flying right
Okay.
now without Ohio. I know I'm going
All
off on a
right.
tangent here,
Get
but
off the Ohio soapbox. We hear you. Okay. We
get
get it.
you guys in California get all the cool stuff, but everybody's like, oh, Ohio this, Ohio that. Captain Flowers is from Ohio, bringing it back to the LCS.
Yeah, that's you know what? That's a great. You know what? You're right. Shout out to Ohio.
dude, maybe they'll make Skarner's rework. Maybe they'll make an Ohio skin for Skarner. That'd be cool.
Just a cornfield, like cornfield's corner.
There aren't as many cornfields here as people think there are, but yes, it is. It is
I
funny.
just
I'm
sorry, I wasn't trying to be biased towards Ohio. I just know that Captain Flowers. There's this great. I can't even remember who wrote it now, but there's this great article about Captain Flowers' casting origins called "Casting in a Cornfield" because he did like get started in rural Ohio.
Well, it's
But
actually
I know you guys have cities too. I know it's civilization. You know, I'm
well,
not.
I will say it's actually really funny. Sorry, we're going on a small tangent because we really don't have much to go through with our power rankings this week, so we'll keep that part relatively short. But
So we're just
I
talking about Ohio instead.
I will say this. What's funny is, and I doubt Captain Flowers probably remembers this, but actually the last tournament that he was supposed to cast before he became an LCS caster was House Wars, which was the only tournament that the LC that we threw for the highest level League of Legends teams. Because for a while we actually had one of the best teams that weren't in Challenger under the Gamehouse banner, and we actually had Ender was one of our big casters for that
Oh, what? I
tournament.
didn't know that.
So yeah,
I missed that.
I'll have
That's
to show
cool.
you. It was years ago. Oh my god. I mean, I think it was 2017, 2018,
Yeah, we
somewhere
might
in
have
there.
not met by then. Yeah,
No, you
find
and I
that.
definitely hadn't met yet, and I know that like Captain Flowers was like our big guy that we were supposed to have, and then he messaged us like a week before it started and was like, "Hey, I'm really sorry I can't do this tournament anymore because I actually just got called up to the LCS." I was like, "Oh my gosh, well, okay, that's fair." So,
Yeah.
that
And
was
the
really
rest is
funny.
history, as they
Yeah,
say.
and then Ender made his way up to it as well. Like there were some like decently big players in that tournament as well. And I always like to brag because our Gamehouse team actually beat um, Tanner Time and Demonte's team for the Challengers
What?
playoffs. Yeah, when he was
That's
there.
wild.
So our team, those guys never made it, sadly, but those five players will always stick in my mind. They were so much fun to watch. And those were the days back when you could play yourself into Challengers. Um, that was the last season that you could do it. It was pretty crazy.
Mm.
So, sorry, bit of a tangent there, as we said. Nick and I, even though we've known each other for many years at this point, we still always have like little LCS tidbits that we like to surprise each other with. But we will pop back in, like we said, back off the tangent train to week 4, specifically, obviously, week 5. If you missed it, we did do a deeper dive into FlyQuest and 100 Thieves with our last 2 episodes. So I would highly suggest you go back and watch those if you get the opportunity. But Nick, I want to hop into our power rankings.
Yep.
There's not a whole lot that's changed, I think, since kind of the week ended. At least for me. I don't know if maybe, you feel differently. I'm still not comfortable putting 100 well, wait. Maybe we did mess this up. Maybe we were supposed to actually make new ones. Now that I'm thinking about it, I can't remember because.
I think we were no, because like we made them since they last.
Since
They
they
haven't
last
played
played,
since we
right?
last made them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. I
so I
thought
don't
so.
see unless there was like a roster announcement, which there hasn't been
Which is
any news coming out
shocking,
of LCS camp.
to be honest.
I
I
mean,
really thought
I
that there
don't
would be at
know.
least one change. Well, I figured like
I
if
don't.
somebody wanted
Okay,
to
well,
make
which
a
that's
run,
interesting. Which team makes a change though? Like that's interesting to me because I feel like even like the lowest teams have been able to challenge some of the top teams. It's been a matter of consistency or sometimes things happening on a knife
yeah.
edge. Like I think this season more than others might actually. I mean, I think this is true for every season, and we've had people kind of extrapolate this out with like different like reverse engineer this with like changing best of 3 leagues to best of 1s, seeing how different the standings would be.
Yeah.
I think that we might have very different standings in the LCS with the best of 3 format. I think
Yeah.
all these teams are a lot better than records standings indicate. I mean, our last place teams are 3 and 6. That's not a ton of game. Like there's less. We've had games of we've had a lot of seasons before where there's been a much wider gap, both in
Oh,
terms of
without a
record and in terms
doubt.
of
And I think there
play.
would be if we had 9 or if we had 10 teams. But I do think it will be interesting to see like that the big discussion this week has been around best of 3s. I know it's been for many years now. I've personally been a big advocate for it. If you feel like it's worth the time, I would be happy to discuss that on this episode because again,
Yeah,
I don't think
well,
there's much to do with our power rankings. Actually, you know what? Why don't we do power rankings real quick and then we'll do best of 3s and
sure.
then we'll head into picks. All right. Power
Yeah.
rankings wise, the only thing I would consider changing maybe is 100 Thieves. Mostly for the fact that I think I'm giving NRG and C9 a lot of love here, even though I don't know that they necessarily have earned it. I just think that they are going to be better over these last 5 games, so I'm still putting them there, and I think that 100 Thieves will fall off at some point.
Mhm.
That being said, I feel like the rest of this works pretty well. I'm pretty happy with where everybody is at, so Do you have any? I mean, like, again, sorry guys, there's not much for us to dive into until the games come back on. I wanted to try to keep this like a more normal episode. Obviously, so far it has been anything but, and we've already been talking for 10 minutes. But the point is that, I think that the top five teams are who they are, and then I think the bottom three teams are kind of in their own category as well. I don't even know that I necessarily think FlyQuest are exceptionally better than any of the other four, other than maybe TL, of the other, top four teams, I will say, behind them. So I don't
Hmm.
know. What are there any other like major thoughts you have? I would consider moving 100 Thieves up maybe one spot at most. And you could convince me to flip flop NRG and C9, but I more see them as like a 2A and a 2B currently, than I do as a 2 and a
Yeah.
3.
No, I mean, I'm kind of with you. I'm not really changing much. I think that my picks for this week will kind of like explain my rankings a little bit more because I do agree with a lot of it has to do with like counterbalancing like current standing and recent results of like what I think these teams are capable of, and
Sure.
how the 2 week break will benefit them. So I don't really, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat as you there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then, I mean, like I said, I think we'll move on from that. And I think that if you guys have any suggestions or any things that you think differently before we head into it, maybe these 2 weeks off have given you, you've been contemplating a lot and you've decided that you want to move Shopify Rebellion up to one. I will hear your argument down in the comment section, but I cannot promise that I won't roast you, just because I fully anticipate eventually to get roasted for some of my opinions, like Ohio being one of the best states, in America. And so, that's fine. I'll take that. I will absolutely fully take it on, but just know I'll give it back out too. We will move on though to best of threes. This was not a planned segment. I wanted to talk about it with Nick, potentially even offline, but I do think maybe we should bring it up here a little bit.
Yeah, I think we can touch on it. Yeah,
We
for
have not
sure.
had best of threes since I think it was 2018, 2019, somewhere around there.
2017 was the
Has it
last
really
year.
been that long? Okay, wow.
They returned to best of ones for franchising. The first year of franchising in
Then they
the
had best
LCS
of
was
twos for a little bit,
2018.
right?
We never had best of twos at the
That was
top
just
level. It
Europe.
was
Europe
Europe
did for
did
a little
that
bit.
for a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I think 2017, 2018 they had best of twos. They went back to best of one for franchising as well, but the LEC franchising didn't occur until 2019 was the first year. It
That's
was a
right.
year after North
That's
America
right.
franchised. So
Yeah.
they went back to best of. We went back to best of ones because they were saying that it didn't. They basically made the argument that anything that they said best of threes was going to be for wasn't worthwhile, and that the losses in other areas weren't worth it. So the idea basically being that competitive results year over year didn't improve, and we lost viewership. We get more viewers if we have best of one all in one broadcast, right?
I
That
have
was kind of why they went back.
such a strong argument that is like unbelievably false in my opinion. I think it's just
Yeah,
that they wanted, so essentially best of threes, they've always argued, to add on to Nick's point, has been specifically for watchers. They felt like too many people stopped watching. There was just too much LCS. It was a lot, I'm sure, for the broadcasting groups and everything like that as well. Especially
yeah,
back then, they had a much bigger pool of people for their broadcasts. I mean, they even had, two specific interviewers. That's when like Avali really started getting herself really big into the LCS.
yeah.
Like I remember those years very specifically, with her, and like that's when they brought up Captain Flowers as well, obviously. Harkening back to our previous conversation. See, everything has a little bit to do with what we're talking about today, kind of. But what's been really interesting to me is the last time an LCS team made it to even semifinals at Worlds, if I remember correctly, because I think I did an article on this or I talked about it a long time ago. The last time that we made it to semifinals internationally, I think outside of that Team Liquid run at MSI, obviously,
You're talking about worlds, yeah, because
specifically about
TL did
Worlds,
it.
was
Yeah,
C9, and I believe it was the last year that we had best of threes. You'd have to check me on that.
it's first year best. It was the first year of franchising. We
Okay,
had just
so
gone back to best
regardless,
of
but they
ones.
had just stopped doing it, essentially. It was like still within that realm of where, I don't know.
It was a full year after best
Was
of
it a
one
full
play.
years? I
But
can't.
yeah, because it was Worlds 2018, but this is also kind of feeding right into my point, which is that I think there's a lot of arguments about like, I mean, look, if you have to do it for viewership, I mean, I can't really comment on that. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't, I understand that the league needs to be viable in that way, and it's having trouble in that area. But for me, I think the idea of viewing best of threes as like a should we or shouldn't we? Let's weigh the options. Let's weigh the validity. Like you've already lost the plot there. I think. Like, why are you not like the fact that there's even a conversation? I think it should just be by default. We should have best of threes. I don't care.
Yes.
Oh well, the competitive results didn't improve. Like, yeah, well, they're not going to get better. Like, it's not like
Well, playing less
that's
games doesn't make
yeah,
it better.
that doesn't yeah, and if their argument is that like, oh well, viewership's better, it's like, well, if viewership's going to be worse than it is now with that, like not, and again, it's improving, so I do
Slightly.
understand like the concerns, but it's like the idea of not even having, but like again, like it shouldn't even be a conversation. Like regardless of what your argument is, like, oh well, let's take a look. Like, no, let's not take a look at the viability. Like, this is the best competitive format. I understand why we can't do best of fives every single day, so we do best of threes. Um, but I don't know. I think especially like we do this show every single week, and like I often find myself having trouble like really drawing conclusions from best of ones because yes, scrims don't matter in
Hmm.
terms of record, and scrims aren't the same level of stakes or whatever. But it's 2 games versus like 15 games of practice. Like that's why these scrim stories come out is because you have the sample size of this team tearing people in scrims and they shit the bed twice on stage. It's like that is an interesting point. They were so good all week, many more games. Whereas if we saw them shit the bed in 2 best of 3s, oh well, tough shit, right? Or maybe they don't shit the bed. Maybe their opening game ones are absolutely terrible, and then they end up winning the series 2-1. We have a totally different idea of what this team is. Like I just it's not a good sample size, regardless of how well or bad North America does at Worlds. That shouldn't be an argument. So
Well,
I think that like
I
that's that being a justification. If it's for viewership, say it's for viewership. If it's for watchability, say it's for watchability. But this I like that shouldn't be a factor at all
see.
because it's not going to
I'm
hurt
gonna
us in that area.
I'm gonna push back a little bit, mostly because of this. What is the number one cure for every team in all of history when it comes to people being interested in the team?
Uh, alcohol abuse.
Okay, beside that, it's
No,
winning.
no,
It's
it's
winning.
winning. Yeah, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So if the LCS, this has been my biggest argument. If the LCS has zero shot of winning worlds, then like why? Right? Like what do we have to do to get them there? And everybody's like, oh, well, it has to do with talent. We bring over Prince, arguably one of the best young talents we could have definitely gotten from the LCK. He doesn't even make it to to summer finals. Like he doesn't even make it to summer playoffs. He finishes ninth with his team, right? Like there are reasons. I'm not saying the best of three is going to fix it all, but there comes a point for me at least, especially with these declining viewership numbers, where if you're not, if I feel like the thing that people love the most is Worlds, right? It gets the most viewership. It's still one of the most watched esports events in the entire world by a very large margin. If an NA team just has to hope, like a minor region team has to hope to get through, the group stages, right? Or through play-ins, then like, NRG making it through was great and everything, but it didn't ultimately matter. They still got smoked afterwards, right? And one of the things that I have heard verbatim from players when I ask them during interviews, when I've had a chance to talk to them on the side, they love stage games. And the reason why they love stage games is because you have to play it out no matter what. And you have to bring your best. It's the whole iron sharpens iron argument, right? Where you literally are having the two teams play at their absolute best, or at least theoretically their best, in a game so that then you can learn from it. Like what they go over in these games, like scrim results, right? The biggest conversation a couple years ago was, well, teams are leaving scrims. Teams aren't even showing up for scrims. Blah, 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 scrims this, scrims that. Well, guess what? They have to show up for their stage games, right? Like they literally have to be there. So, and like when you compare what is the LCK and the LPL besides, everybody's like, oh, they play the game 19 hours a day or whatever, right? Okay, whatever. Fine. I get that. But what else are they doing that we aren't? They're basically playing the same amount of games that like the LCS was playing in a full year in a couple of weeks.
Hmm.
And if you're going to tell me that that kind of play is not going to make these players better, then I'm just going to tell you genuinely, and I'm very sorry, but you're stupid. Like that just, there's no logical argument in my mind that's going to tell me that them playing more games that matter is not going to make them better. It's not going to make the coaching staffs better, right? Like every coach, even, I know you've heard this too. Yeah, coaching for best of ones and best of threes are completely different things. Completely
Yeah.
different.
What are you doing at best of one? It's
You're just,
you get the
you could
draft you hope for, and
choose.
then you take your hands off the wheel, and hopefully we were
Yeah,
happy tonight. Hopefully it's a happy dinner.
there's way more
Like
strategy, and it's like, yeah, I understand the LCS doesn't have as many
adjustments.
resources, blah, blah, blah. Fine, I get it. Dude, if you're telling me that there aren't a bunch of young casters, look at all the NACL casters. Do you think they wouldn't love the opportunity to cast one game in a series? Right? To take some of the heat off of the other, off of the, LCS desks. Like there are ways in my mind where you could easily have a Friday to Monday schedule where teams, if they need it, because I know this is, I'm pretty sure how they used to do it too, because I think it was spread out over 3 days instead, but you would play two times a week, one best of three on the 2 days that you would play. And if you're going to tell me that tripling the amount of games in a split wouldn't help these teams, you're crazy. Like I think you are factually, in my mind, I guess technically that doesn't make it factual. I guess technically, in my opinion, you're wrong. I still think that there's substantial factual evidence that you would be wrong, but I can't bring it up here because I haven't had a chance to really look it up, because again, I wasn't anticipating us talking about this. And I understand the argument for viewership, right? They want more entertainment, all that kind of stuff. Guys, look at the broadcast now. There is no entertainment. They just go game to game basically at this point, right? Like if that's the way it's going to be, then like let people just tune in whenever they want. Who cares? Like for right now, you need to build back up the league. You need to make these teams watchable. One, two, if they find success at MSI, if they find consistent success at Worlds, right? To where they're making deeper runs, right? They're making top eights, maybe finding a way to semifinals. Like you're just creating a better ecosystem. It's just felt like for so long, the LCS has been like, we want short solutions for the short-term value that it's not going to allow everything to build itself out. League of Legends as a game is not going anywhere right now. It is continuing to trend in at least a neutral position or in a positive direction. In my opinion, like I'm sorry, and I know that viewership sells sponsorship dollars and everything, but if you laid out like a 5 to 10 year plan with these sponsors where, hey, we're going to start more advertising opportunities. Maybe it's less eyeballs. Like I know I won't be able to watch every game right when they're being played. That's a lot of games during a day. I fully understand that. Maybe you play 2 of the games not on broadcast or something like that, right? Or and you allow it to be streamed but with no
They had a secondary broadcast back in
yeah, they used
2017 when they
to,
had
and it
when
made
they
it
when it was
it did
yeah.
make it tough to watch all of them. I will fully admit that. But like, yeah, or
But
maybe you're
like you
playing
don't watch
games at the
every
same
game for
time.
every sports. You watch your team or a few
Exactly.
teams. Like if
Exactly. And like that
that's the
mindset
idea,
is
right?
gone. It just doesn't exist. They're like, well, it has to be in
Yeah.
every game. And it's like, dude, look, would you rather watch 3 games between FlyQuest and C9 while Immortals and Dignitas are playing each other? Yeah, I would. Right? Like allow those choices to be made. And you can change the broadcast schedule. Who cares? If they're still playing on the same day, it doesn't matter. Right?
Yeah.
Like
No, I
I,
agree.
I think
And
that there are
that's
just so many solutions to this that they just don't want to do, and I've never understood that. Like, to be honest with you, like my interest in the LCS would spike immensely if there were more games to watch. It's one of my favorite things
yeah.
about baseball, and I think the problem is like we're now in the area where League of Legends fans are more like baseball fans, right? They are hardcore, dedicated fans, whereas a lot of NFL fans, because I know that to compare it more to the NFL, I think nowadays, especially with best of ones, a lot of them are kind of casual. Like if there were like, 40 games in a season for the NFL, which would kill the players' bodies, but we're not going to talk about that part of it. I'm just talking about like in a theoretical world where there were a ton more games
Yeah.
and like you would miss a lot, even during NFL Sundays. I mean, you're not most people aren't watching every game, right? Most people don't give a crap about the other 31 teams. They only care about their team. So
Yeah, yeah.
I just I'm sorry. I know I've gone on a rant. I've been wanting to put this out there in a podcast form for a really long time, and I just haven't done it. And
No, for
I have
sure.
a lot of really pent up frustrations with the fact that so many people. And to be clear, I respect a lot of them. I have a very good relationship with Chris Greeley, in like in particular. He and I think, have always really seen eye to eye. We've had a lot of really good conversations. One of the things that I have always wanted, the managerial side, like one of the things that I really hope, despite Travis's recent video, I didn't watch all of it, so I'm not calling him out for all of it, but I know his initial opinion was, I think it could be a trap for, best of threes. And he's worried that, Mark Z and all of them are just listening to the fans. Like, listen to the fans on this one. We are the most dedicated ones. We're the ones who are sticking around, even with a subpar, a subpar offering right now. I mean, we've lost two of our teams. My favorite team is gone, and I'm still watching every week, right? So, like, if it's me and most of the other people nowadays wanting best of threes, then give them back. And if you lose some viewership, so be it, right? Like, the best way for you to gain it back is to show that you have a viable product that is interesting, right? And that you can, hopefully, with this sort of gamble, I'll call it, see better results internationally. Winning matters. And if, like, by some miracle this helped LCS teams enough, I'm not going to say this is what's going to happen, but if it helped an LCS team well enough to, let's pretend, win Worlds, do you not think viewership in the LCS would not absolutely increase by a substantial amount? Think of all
Right.
of the Western fans that watch the LCK and the LPL now. It's because they're good. It is because they are
Yeah.
winners. Like, if you don't think that fans in Eastern countries would watch more LCS and LEC if the teams actually had a chance, if they weren't just laughable most of the time when they were at international events, then you're wrong. Like, I just genuinely believe that you are wrong. Again, I'll take it away from the factual point of it, but I will just say I do not believe that. And if you really think that, like, the infrastructure isn't enough, or their desire to want to play harder isn't there, look at players like Jensen, who play all the time, who are practice just insane amounts. Like, sure, like, some people won't practice as
Yeah.
hard. That's how it is in professional competitive anything. Like, the lack of
Yeah.
understanding of how things work in a competitive professional sports environment has always been shocking to me. You're gonna have those people who bust their butts and play all the time, and you're gonna have those who skate by because they're just automatically very talented. That's how it is. But I could go on for hours. I'm gonna just stop at this point because I'm actually
Yeah.
getting frustrated even talking about it to myself. So you go.
I will say no, no. I will say. I mean, to your points that I agree with completely. I don't think that best. This is not to say that best of three suddenly, North America are world beaters. They weren't when we had best of three for the last 2 years. What I'm saying is that one, it definitely can't hurt to play more games, and two, I agree with you. I think that you could counterbalance even if you're going to drop some viewership. What is going to save your viewership is if you're I don't know, if your teams win, right?
Yeah.
And I think you could argue maybe we tank 2 years of viewership if we really think if best of threes can one help this region, like be better in
Mm-hmm.
2 years. Because what's going to matter regardless of format is if you suddenly have North American teams being elite, it is no one gives a shit. Look how many
Yep.
people hate the Valorant format right now. What just happened in G2 and Sentinels
Mm-hmm.
over the weekend, right? It doesn't matter though because North American teams are good. That's the only reason people are even talking about it because they're there. I tried to go to
Exactly.
Valorant this weekend. I couldn't because it was sold out. Like the format's not good. Everybody knows it. No one cares because the teams are elite. And here's the other thing. Outside of all of this, my main point that I was trying to make was that I agree with everything you're saying. I'm saying that outside of that conversation, we should have best of threes anyway.
Yeah.
We should ask yourself,
Yeah.
you should ask yourself, what is a better match? Like in my opinion, learning more, watching these teams adjust, that's why I like League of Legends
Mm-hmm.
personally. I like to
Same
see
way.
those adjustments. I like to see I would also be in support of I love that NACL is not just doing best of threes, they're doing fearless draft. It's been so much fun to see. And people are like, oh, it'll be weird, we'll get Timo. It's like, no, you won't get Timo. These are still best of threes, okay? Like
There's
like they've been reasonable
170
comps. It just
champions.
requires yeah, it just requires people to dig a little deeper, and it's very refreshing to not have to only have a zero and half the games instead of all the games, right? And the biggest thing is they're always talking about like, well, more entertaining product. It's not helping competitive viability. I'm like, okay, well, let's step away from that argument altogether. What we do have in the LCS, regardless of our level, is all of our teams right now. I think you can find a reason to watch them. They're entertaining. Even our two last place teams, I can give you a good reason to watch either of them and have a good time. Why would we not have more of that? Why would we not have a more? If you want to have more, how is best of three not a more entertaining product as well? Maybe I'm out of touch with the rest of the viewers. For me, regardless of what it means for international or how good these teams are or anything, I'd still rather watch best of threes
I
regardless of any of those arguments.
I'm the same
And
way.
I'm confused as to why it even is a talking point of like, well, we should. We should like, well, no, we just should. The end, and then we can talk about. I don't see why these are connected. You should just have best of like. There's like you said, there's no world where best of one is better than best of threes, and you can also point to these some of these insane miracle runs in North American history, oftentimes through a gauntlet in which a team played an entire split's worth of best of ones in 3 days.
Yep.
Like, right? Really, it's like you think of the Cloud9 run and the Clutch Gaming, the Cloud9 2015 run with High as a Jungle, or Clutch Gaming 2019 Miracle run, right? They played 19 games in 3 days after playing 18 for 7 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is a correlation there, and not that scrim culture may not being good is a good thing, but you're right. There's what's good culture? On stage culture. There's no issue with on stage culture right now, as far as I understand. Give people more games on stage. I don't see it. We can talk about viewership and competitive viability. I don't see how taking best of threes away is even or not having best of threes is even a conversation, is even related to that conversation at all for me.
I just can't imagine why the Players Association hasn't just outright asked the LCS to do this, or at least had that conversation with them. And maybe they have, and we just haven't heard about it. But it would be better for them, right? Because the players, I have yet to ever hear of a player who actively enjoyed playing League of Legends at a pro level say that they didn't like best of threes. I seriously haven't. Where have you ever heard one that's like, yeah, I love best of ones, love it. You just don't hear it because they know, and it's like, dude, game times, especially compared to what they were back in the day, right? They're 10 minutes shorter, so there's a lot less time, and it's like.
And our broadcast changes in the LCS, the pacing changes have been really good. I bet anyone who feels like best of threes were a slog in the past would not feel that way.
Yeah.
Because in 2017, yeah, it was tough to watch like a
12-hour day,
faltering
yeah.
P1 against like P1
Apex.
2017 Phoenix One Optic was tough. I get it. The cool thing is you can walk away from the screen. But you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know.
It gives incentives for teams to be better too, right? If you're just getting embarrassed and you're just going to be put in lower slots, the sponsorship for the teams as well is going to diminish. If you're playing in front of, we'll say, 60,000 viewers, I know that's not the hundreds of thousands that LCS fans want, but dude, you can't tell me that more time is still going to be valuable to sponsors outside of 20, 30 minutes.
Hey, that's more ad breaks.
That is. It's absolutely more ad breaks. And it's like, oh, well, then you can't have them draft ahead of time. You have them draft ahead of time for the first game. Then during the 10-minute break, you give them 5 minutes to kind of compose themselves, figure things out, and then they hop back into another draft. What did we learn from that? Right? I mean, we do that essentially for Clash. I mean, I know it sounds stupid. It's not a great comparison, but you have 5 minutes for your next Clash game. You got to figure it out there, right? And it's then you have, there are more positions that can become available in the LCS. It can grow the ecosystem at such a better rate. And I know it's not the best solution, probably. There may be a better one, but to me, this whole I'm sick of seeing best of ones. I know you are too.
Yeah.
They're not helpful. I mean, look at these freaking power rankings. This is why you get a C9 at 4 and 5, and you're wondering, hey, hell, if they drop 3 more games, there's a chance that I would say that arguably our best team doesn't even make it, right? And it's more games also allows you to really figure out who the best teams are. You don't get 40 teams.
It's just not a viable sample size.
Yeah, it's not enough. League of Legends is more like baseball than football. I'm sorry. You should have more games. There's a reason why there are more games in baseball, because it allows for the sample sizes. Maybe it shouldn't be as much. I'll listen to that argument, but for the LCS, I think they have to bring best of threes back, especially if you only have 8 teams. You know what
That's
I
another
mean?
thing too, right? It's like it's
Like, why
less than ever.
not?
The broadcast is quicker than ever. Like, what's yeah, and that's again, like
Yeah, it's like three and a
outside of
half
the
hours.
ecosystem conversation, just like it should like again, like all these conversations should go on, but best of three is just I don't know, like even from a may I'm alone in this, or like maybe not everyone feels this way, but like as a viewer, I'd rather watch best of threes. So like I don't know. I don't know. It's
And I guess
I
like
don't know.
the last thing I want to say, and this is no insult to especially like casters or the people who are working behind the scenes, but in all reality, especially now when we don't have super fun segments and all this other stuff that they're putting together, they're working 2 days a week. Genuinely. Most of the time they're doing, I know, other stuff, but like, and I know they're having their meetings and everything, but like,
There's a lot of pre-production and stuff that goes on
I
during the
that's why I'm
week.
saying I'm not trying to take away from that, but especially when you've
Yeah.
taken away so much, but like comparatively to even last year, right? The pre-production has been significantly decreased. Significantly. I mean, you can't argue that. Like they are
Yeah,
not
it's very
doing
much more
as
about
many.
get to the game,
Yeah, it's
you
get to
know,
the games. That's my point. And if that's gonna
which I'm
be
fine
how it
with.
is, yeah, if that's gonna be how it is, then have more games. That's great. Again, this is not a. That's not a. This is not meant to dog the talent by any stretch. It's just more of there's more time. There's genuinely more time based on the fact that a lot of things have been cut out, especially compared to the past, right? And
Mm.
so I would, and I can't imagine that they would disagree. I'm sure that they would love to see best of threes because then there are more things for them to look at, to discuss, right? Like
Right.
there's more for them to do, like in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sure I'm gonna get flamed because people are gonna be like, I can't believe you're talking bad about the cast. I'm not. That is not what this is about. I'm not saying that what they're doing isn't enough right now by any stretch. I'm just genuinely pointing out that there is more time because there are less things that they have to come up with right now. Like we're seeing it on the
Yeah.
broadcast. There's just not. I mean, like they like I can't remember them really even doing much of a segment in between games at all anymore. It's just interviews, and then you just hop in the next game.
There's been some stuff, but it's been
Not as
less like
much.
it's not
It's
like
like
there's
it's
an
very very
analysis
small.
segment and then an entertainment segment and then a game. It's like usually
Yeah,
there's one kind of thing and then game and then one kind of thing and then game. You know, like
exactly. It's very small.
which I again I'm okay with that completely. And
I'm
I
fine
think
with
what
it.
you're saying is that that's fine, but in that case, let's get more games. We're going to focus on the game, which I
That's
totally
exactly what
understand.
I
And
mean. Is like you could
yeah,
fit more games in there, and then like that will allow them, I think, to have more to talk about with these guys too, right? Like
mm,
that gives them more content to work with.
yeah,
Um,
I got to tell you, and I would, and you know, for those of you who haven't, you know, when you interview players after a best of one, like oftentimes like they'll say what went on in the game, but you're like, well, what like I've stopped asking stuff like, well, what can we like learn from this stuff like that. It's like
because you can't learn
usually it's like,
anything.
well, it was one game, so I don't know. Especially if it's like there's if there's like, oh well, we didn't expect this cheesy pick, and good on them, and they deserve that win. But also like we didn't learn anything from that. Where it's like, oh man, that was a cheesy pick. They got a game from us. We got to ban that in game two. We got to figure out what their weaknesses are when they're not relying on that. Like there's so much more to dig into. These teams will know each other better. And that's also another thing that I think people. It's not about just like more games being played. It's like the more these teams play, they're going to adapt to each other. They're going to get better. In the fighting game community, there's definitely a culture of like I want the people around me to get better. I will teach them the tricks that I have. I will share. If you notice, like you in League of Legends, you don't share your strategies, like which makes sense before competition, right? But in the fighting game community, for example, like it's very much like about like I'm gonna have to keep playing this guy all the time,
Yes,
like
there's
at
no
a local
rivalries.
tournament. So if he gets better and figures this, if I show him this, and this doesn't directly apply to League of Legends, but what I mean is more games means the teams will then elevate each other because it's like, well, if I do this and then he figures it out, that only I then have to figure the next thing out, right? And more games would facilitate that for sure. I mean,
Well, and it
we're
creates
seeing a world where
rivalries,
like
dude. We
you
have
know
no rivalries anymore. Like your rivalries are like they try to create them out of nothing. Like, oh, we have an NRG C9 rivalry now. Do we really? They played each other once in a finals. I know it's a little
yeah, I think
CLG,
like
but it's like you can create more
I
rivalries
think
when you play
TL
more
and
and more.
RG is more of a rivalry than that, just because of like APA and contracts are two of the only
Yeah,
players willing to talk shit. Props to them for
yeah,
that.
and it's just like, I mean,
Or like
there's
NRG
no other.
FlyQuest, because FlyQuest is like NRG's wins a fluke. I'm like, there we go, give me more of that, like
Exactly, and it's like, look at all the other esports. They're all playing multiple rounds of something, most of them, right? It's very. I can't really think of many that have one game, one game a day by their teams, right? Like Overwatch, even back when it was still a thing, like it was multiple maps, right? Same with Valorant, same with CS:GO.
yeah.
I just don't understand the argument for against, and I'm sure I've made a lot of really bad points that people are going to point out. That's fine. I don't care. I think ultimately you and I just both want best of threes back because I do think it's going to
Yeah.
make this region more interesting and stronger. And I will gladly debate somebody on the other side. Like they are more welcome to come on here. I'll go over to their show. I don't really care. I'm not going to offer up Nick because I know that's not fair to you. But I will say that
No,
I
I'll
will
do it.
rep.
That's my whole point is in any negative argument of like, oh well, it'll hurt viewership. I'm like this needs like if that's how fragile the viewership problem is, there are bigger problems in the format.
That's
And
absolutely true.
and best of three is this is it's a non-starter art. The reason why I'm willing to debate is because I haven't heard a point that I think like, okay, fair enough. I understand how that makes sense in this ecosystem. That being said, best of ones aren't the solution for that. Like
Yeah.
forget about best of threes as a problem and start like showing where best of ones are the right choice instead of best of threes being the wrong choice.
Well,
And I haven't had someone be able to do that for me yet. It
and
just seems to be like, well, this is the thing that we're doing to save the most money or have the most viewers. I'm like, okay, we'll see. But
well,
like
and
I don't know.
that's the thing is it's like it's more there's like it's more money to keep the broadcast up and to do all these other things. Like, dude,
Yeah, I get it.
streaming on Twitch is free. Streaming on YouTube is free. Like, if you want to just have it to where these players play, like maybe they come in, right, and maybe two of their games are at home, and then they play a game on stage, right?
No, I
Like,
wouldn't like that
I
personally,
wouldn't love it,
but
but like if it allows us to have more games and it
yeah,
allows
I
us
get what
to
you're
build
saying.
up to what we used to have, then that's fine. I'm just saying like there are ways where you can get around it where they're still playing these games that matter. That's all. Right? Like think about the
Yeah,
setups that we had during 2020. Like just do that. Like I know everybody's like, "Oh, we want to get back in person." Oh, dude, I'm sorry guys, the tickets that they're selling and the amount of food that they are selling at the LCS arena right now does not equal enough to run that whole thing for a day. I'm just going to be
no,
honest with you. And
no,
just
not
because
even close.
like it's not even comparable. So like everybody's like, but then they
No,
wouldn't have the LCS arena. Like it's a cool venue. I appreciate that as much as anybody. I still haven't even been able to go. I've been covering this for
yeah, you
years. I've never even had a chance to go. Right? I hope that it stays open long enough for me to be able to do that. But if you're telling me that they couldn't set up in their practice rooms, in their scrim rooms, and actually play games on different days, maybe, and then you just have Saturday, Sunday be the days where the teams actually come in and play each other. Like if you're telling me people wouldn't casually watch that on like Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday, like they have their one game. So like here you go. I'm giving you a solution right now. Thursdays and Fridays, you have two best of threes each day. But you start with the two first games there, right? Okay? Or I guess it would be technically four. You have all the teams play on Thursday, all the teams play two games on Friday, and then they come in on Saturday and Sunday for one game each. There you go. They don't even have to be there all day. They can get a lot of their interviews and stuff out of the way early, or they can just do them on Saturday, Sunday. I know that's less scrim time, but like again, everybody always agrees on stage time and playing games that actually matter are more important anyways. So and I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. I just think that like that's just a random solution I'm throwing out there. I'm not going to say it works with their practice schedules and everything else that they have. I know they need days off too. I fully respect that. So maybe I'm just completely wrong on that. I feel like I'm hitting a lot of really controversial topics here. I feel like people are going to get really pissed off
nah.
at me, but
Hey, I hope so. It means they're listening. I'm happy to start a discussion.
okay, that's
Yeah,
enough about our thoughts on best of threes. We'll come back to that maybe another day. If you guys want to hear more of
I'm
potentially
sure we
my
will
hot
at some
takes
point.
and Nick's hot takes, then we'll bring it on. But
Yeah,
all right, let's head into week 5 picks. I think the biggest ones here that we need to talk about are the FlyQuest C9 game.
Hmm.
I would say, the rest of these you guys can see, but generally day two picks for us are the same. It's basically just the first two games that we have difference. Um,
Hmm.
I think it's really interesting, by the way, that you have 100 Thieves losing to Dignitas already after our big conversation with them. Again, if you want to see more on probably why Nick feels that way, you can catch it on the last episode that or 2 episodes ago that we had. Let's quickly talk about C9 FlyQuest, and then we'll pop off for the day. Why do you think FlyQuest come out on top on this one?
So I think C9, we're going to see my theme this week is a regression to the norm. I think we're going to see
Okay.
teams like C9 and NRG start to look more like themselves. And we're going to see teams like 100 Thieves start to look more like we expected. Um, which that kind of explains that. You might be asking, well, then why is C9 lose to Fly? I'm like, 'cause
That's what I want to know.
I don't think FlyQuest is gonna regress. I think what we're gonna find out is
Okay.
that FlyQuest is right where they are, and the rest of the league that we expect to be better than them has gotten worse around them. And I think C9's gonna, we have FlyQuest here, and C9's gonna be trending upwards. But this
Sure.
is the first game of the week. I still think they're gonna be like, fuck, we're on a lose. We're not playing well. Blah blah blah. They're going to lose this game, and then I think it's very likely that they don't lose another game for the rest of the season. Like I think that
Wow.
like they,
Okay.
I think, I mean,
I
what
like
there's
that.
5 games. I think they lose to FlyQuest, and then I think they win their last 4 games and go into the playoffs strong. I think that if maybe FlyQuest was game 2, if their schedule was reversed, I could see C9 winning. I think that this week they will be pulling out of some slump materials for sure in certain areas of their gameplay. But I think they have their toughest challenge, and I think mentally, it's like fuck. We're here in fourth, they're in first. It's supposed to be the opposite of this. I think it's gonna be a close game. I just think that they'll end up losing. It'll be like, oh dang, But like it'll actually be if you look like, oh, this team played better, but they're still gonna lose to FlyQuest. But then I think that they're going to be able to build upon that and do well. I just think that FlyQuest it's the toughest opponent they could face on day one coming back. There's still after a 2 week break. And C9 so far out the gate has been a little rough on their first games out. Another argument for best of threes. So I think that they still will lose that game. I don't think it's impossible for them to win it. I just think that they will lose it
Uh,
because I think it's just start of the week.
I'll give one counterpoint as to why I'm feeling the opposite. I think that it all is based around the break. I think they had a 2 week break. We saw how hot C9 started out after a longer break at the beginning of the split, right? They obviously had, pretty much the entire winter off. They come back, they played really strong. I think they've had more time to come together. I think they've had more time to study the tape on teams like FlyQuest, figure out what's making them so successful. And we are on a new patch, which I think will play into C9's strengths and into their ability to come out, I think, in a much stronger position than many other people would tend to think. Now, to be fair, Nick and I are both 50-50 so far this split. Week 4 was quite a doozy, specifically for me, but overall for both of us. So we'll have to see if that holds true. Realistically, we're probably only going to be one game off. Otherwise, we have, like I said, pretty much every pick from NRG, which is game 3 of day 1, down through the very rest of the weekend, picked the same. So I will be interested to see what ends up happening. Let us know in the comments below who you have winning, who you have potentially losing, and why. And yeah, we do apologize a little bit. Again, I think we spent a really long time on the best of 3 conversation. I think we probably hit a lot of nerves with certain people, one way
I'm
or
glad we
another.
did. I think it's
Um,
important to have these
I think
conversations.
it's extremely important. And, again, to be clear, like, we are not insulting anybody's decision making before this necessarily. We have questions about it, but we're not trying to be disrespectful or rude to anybody's time or the decisions that have been made. I'm sure there have been a lot of really good arguments for why they've gotten to where they are now. I just feel like we are now at the point where, and I think you feel the same way, Nick, where it's time to make a really big change. And I think that it could be very beneficial to look at the long term of the LCS instead of just the short term. So we hope that point has come across. I know for Nick, it doesn't matter long term or short term. He still wants best of threes regardless, and I tend to agree with him. But unfortunately, we do have to hop as we have busy days still ahead of us. But we hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. Nick, you got any final thoughts before we hop off?
Since we were doing takes on this episode, I would say that
Uh
Seraphine sucks. Okay, let's move on.
oh, okay.
But I'm not going to go into that right now. So,
Wonder if we're gonna see her this week in the LCS. It's very
I
possible.
hope not.
It's very
I
possible.
hope not.
She got
I
a
always
huge
hope
buff, if I
not.
remember correctly. But
I know.
we'll have to
I
see.
know.
We will have to see. But I appreciate that, and we always appreciate your guys' time. We appreciate your continued interest. And yeah, with that, we'll catch you guys on the next one.